at 27, 28 years old, I found myself with a gut, and, I didn't look like I looked like in high school and college. I didn't look like an athlete anymore. And again, I hit the brakes, and I had time to think and reflect. And I realized that I was living my life for others during that time period, just being materialistic and just trying to make more money. And there was no real sense of fulfillment from it, where there was tremendous sense of fulfillment from the running, the biking, going further than I ever thought I'd be able to go.
Eric, thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to have you.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. And you have my dog Blaze, too, in the background on a road trip from Austin to Florida. So she might make a few appearances.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a dog, Leo, and sometimes he makes appearances. He's not here today, but we were having a really good conversation right out of the gate on just how a lot of our listeners in the high performance life have this misconception that life is just always balanced, or we should always be going towards a balance. And you mentioned that it's a perfect time to have this conversation because you're a little off balanced or off kiltered right now. Share with our listeners maybe a little bit about your journey to the point that you're at right now, and then let's go into a little bit about your opinions and thoughts on finding that balance, or at least getting comfortable in the imbalance.
For sure. So, I think if you're going to achieve anything at a high level, so let's take Ironman, getting to the Ironman World Championships in Kona. To get there, you're training 25 hours a week. If you have a family, if you have a career, if you have other interests, obviously some of those things are going to suffer. And we all have these glass balls that we can't drop. So you probably don't want to drop the I want to be a good dad ball. You probably don't want to drop the I want to be a good husband ball. You probably don't want to drop the I need to fulfill, my job goal ball. So you get out of whack with some other things. And in my Ironman years, I definitely was very much sprinting. I was managing multiple businesses and training 25 hours a week. And I had tunnel vision during that time period because I really wanted to achieve something at a high level. It was really my first time being world class at anything. And 2 to 3 years into the sport, I realized that I could get to the world championships. So I wanted to dedicate my life and my focus to that. And right now I'm in this really interesting chapter where about 7 years ago, my Instagram profile read, retired at 34, exploring the world most days shirtless. And I very much was doing that. I had moved to Colorado and I was just playing all the time in the wilderness. I was having a blast. And I had created some businesses in my 20s and 30s that paved the way to some financial freedom. So with that, I started developing this following on social media, and brands started reaching out. And these last 4 years, I have taken on a lot of different brands, helping them with building their awareness. So creating content for them, building ambassador teams for the brands I'm working with, helping them raise money, investing in them, putting on events. At this point, it's almost weekly where I'm putting on a pretty big community event. That's why I'm in Florida right now. I have 3 events the next 3 weekends. And I've definitely gotten back out of balance, but I realized that I'm having fun. It's fun. I'm not out of balance in a way where I'm like, my job sucks, my relationships suck, my life sucks. I'm very happy. But, I also, about 2 weeks ago, I stopped at a stop sign and had a friend in the car with me at 7 a.m. And I just froze for about 40 seconds. And my friend taps me on the shoulder and he goes, dude, did you just glitch? And I go, I did. Wow. And it's because my nervous system is just so overworked right now. So I recognize that, and I realize that this isn't sustainable. And, at some point, I'm going to have to take some time to figure out how to delegate, automate, and eliminate some of the things I've taken on so I can continue with this trajectory, but not in a way that it's burning me out. And, I've done this enough times to know when I'm at a point of burnout, because I stopped doing triathlon because I burned myself out with it. So, I don't really think you know what it is to be out of balance until you really hit your head on the ceiling and maybe go above the ceiling. And then, you start to recognize that there are ways to maintain that pace. You just have to, again, delegate, automate, eliminate some of the things so you can get back to doing what only you can do and you can do best.
Yeah, it's a great segue to actually talk about a great strategy that you implemented to get faster. and it's go slow to get faster, right? I mean, it's essentially slowing down. And why is it that we actually can know the recipe for success and how to actually get through something, but then we did it, we built it, we believe it, we teach it, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, I need to actually execute upon that very thing. Like you're talking about maybe slowing down a little bit so you can actually amp up again to build. Walk people through both that process that you went through, that your coach taught you in the triathlon process, and then maybe also just how that might be executed in your life today.
For sure. So, this theme is building durability and building an aerobic engine to be really good at endurance sports. And when I first got into triathlon back in 2009, 2010, I had been training CrossFit type workouts, meaning I was doing a lot of strength training and I was doing a lot of anaerobic conditioning, and my workouts really hurt in the moment. They were going at a very high intensity, and I thought that was how you get fitter. You have to push harder. So I get into triathlon and, I start excelling in the sport within the first year and a half, but at shorter distance races, because I could maintain a very high output for about an hour. But there was this guy, Mike Corona, who would beat me in anything longer than about a 2-hour race. So a half Ironman, a full Ironman, he would just, he would mop me up. So I asked him, I'm like, I look so much fitter than you. Like, I'm beating you at all of these shorter races. I can run faster than you. I can bike at a higher wattage. How are you beating me? And he goes, because you're doing everything in the gray zone. You're really, really good for about an hour, but you can't maintain that for over an hour. And endurance sports are all about durability and having this big aerobic engine. So he slowed me down from doing, at the time I was doing all of my running at about a 6:45 to 7 minute per mile pace, and my heart rate was probably 150 to 160. My max heart rate at that time was probably 175. So I was at a pretty high output. And he told me that in order to coach me, I was going to have to dedicate, to listen to him, and I'd have to dedicate all of my training to being around 130 to 135 heart rate, which for me at that time was about an 830 pace. It took him a good 2 or 3 months to finally convince me that it was going to work, because he kept threatening that he was going to fire me if I didn't listen to him. So finally I listened, and sure enough, over a 4-year period of mainly just doing that zone 2, 130 to 135 heart rate training, I went from running an 830 pace at a 140 heart rate to running a 625 pace for 20 plus miles at a 129 heart rate. And it was from slowing down. I slowed down so that I could increase my volume, which increased my durability and allowed me to get better at oxygen usage, so that all of a sudden I could maintain a fairly high output for 10 hours, which is necessary in an Ironman triathlon. So relating that back to business, like a lot of times we get sucked into execution. We're just in it, we're executing, we're going fast, and we don't take a step back to work on the business. And the same can be true for like ourselves, like just executing, we're actually like working on ourselves and implementing some wellness practices because we took a step back and realized that, damn, I really need some meditation. I really need some recovery time. I need more time spent with close friends. So the same is true if you want to advance in self-development or in your business. Go run along the ocean, go bike in the mountains. Like these things for me are my moving meditation, where it forces me to be present. It forces me not to be on my phone and distracted. I'm not executing, and I can make something of all of these dots I've collected all over time, all of the things I've learned, all of the conversations I've had, all of the experiences. You really need to take a step back and just make space to make something of all of those different things. So that's how I would apply it to businesses, and that's how I would apply it to self-development.
Well, what I love so much about the concept is it's something that not only has it worked for you, but it's also something that I've implemented in my life over the years significantly. When you're young, you play a lot of sports, you do a lot of different things. I could have told you I love to sprint. I don't like endurance. I've always been more of a sprinter than an endurance athlete. I like to do things consistently, but I like to sprint, rest. Well, when I executed that as a part of my life and I started to actually do it in my days and think, okay, if you're going to have sprints today, where are your sprints? If you're going to be sprinting, where do you need rest? Where do you need reboot? And just starting slow to the day, as like I'm 45 now. So, for most years, it was getting up, running 150% from the second you wake up, never having a break. And COVID kind of shut things down for me in a lot of ways, because all of a sudden the gym wasn't open, the trainer wasn't showing up, like I had to do something on my own. So being slow now is the workout, the sauna, the cold plunge every morning before I actually start the day. And I feel so productive, so slow, so meditative, spiritually ready. And it's changed the dynamic of something that when I start the sprint, I'm ready. And so what I like about that is just executing it in any way that you can in your life. It obviously works in endurance sports, but understanding who you are and what you're maybe good at and what your output is. Are you hitting that higher? Are you maxing out at 175 way too often in the middle of the day, just working? Are you mentally drained? So as you travel across, from Texas to Florida, do you get into the deep thought that have you been contemplating what that reboot moment, that glitch was? Like, have you been thinking about maybe what are some of the things that you're going to do to adjust or change?
For sure. I mean, so we set up a kind of a social wellness house in Austin. We arrived there on November 1st. Home base for us is Denver, Colorado. So we arrived there on November 1st, and the day we arrived, we set up a SISU sauna, we set up ice barrels, and we set up this big product display. And, it was our intention to spend 2 months in Austin, that do events regularly, have people over every single night to do contrast therapy, and expose hundreds of people to contrast therapy, to meet hundreds of people, and to seed product to hundreds of people. So, we were very intentional that it was going to be a 2-month sprint, and this was probably going to drain our social battery some. And we knew that afterwards we were going to be going to, Florida and spending some time with family, and we would have a little downtime after it. So, I like what you were saying about how your days are structured, in that mine are similar, where I'm just hitting the gas and then I hit the brakes. And, that's kind of how the months flow oftentimes for me too, is I'm hitting the gas for several months and then I pump the brakes a bit. And, I go back to Colorado and I'm in the mountains, and, I have many more solitary practices when I'm in Colorado and in the mountains. So that's really what our home there serves for us. And during the day, I wake up at 6 o'clock, 6 to 7:30 is kind of planning the day. And then 7:30 until 5, my foot's on the gas. I'm going, I'm executing, I'm doing stuff, I'm having conversations, I'm on calls, I'm creating content, I'm going. And then at 5 p.m., it's a pretty abrupt stop where I hit the brake, and then it's recovery time, doing 3 rounds of contrast therapy, going from a hot sauna to a cold plunge. And then I hit the brakes even more after that, where it's just wind down, have dinner at home, learn something, watch a little YouTube, and relax before bed. Very rarely am I hitting the gas after 5 or 6 p.m. It's pretty much just brakes all the way through, because I want to recover enough, I want to recover my mind and nervous system enough that I get deep sleep. I get 8 hours of sleep every night, so that I can do that same, hit the gas pedal again the next day from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. And I know I need that downtime in the evening to set myself up for really good deep sleep.
Yeah, I find the so I imagine you're probably the similar way, in that I don't do well just sitting around doing nothing. Like I struggle just sitting around doing nothing. In fact, I struggle the most when my disciplines and my schedules and my processes are not all aligned. And when weather changes the day, or when something, and I have to like reboot everything in the day, it's challenging. So finding that time in the sauna, finding that time, it's almost like an active reboot. I feel like I'm actively relaxing, which sounds ridiculous to some people, but I can't just veg out and watch TV and waste hours in the middle of the day. Like, I love football, but I don't like to watch Saturday college football, because I'm like, there's so much that I could be doing on a Saturday. But I will go in the sauna and watch some football on a Sunday and then get in the cold plunge and then go back in the sauna and heat up again and do that contrast therapy. And you feel like you're building this resilience for your body to be able to do more, be more, and walk people through your contrast therapy. How do you feel when you do this based on that point? And then what does it actually look like? What are the times that you're doing it? What is the temperature that you're at? Just so listeners can have an understanding of what that dynamic looks like.
Sure. I mean, oftentimes by 5 p.m., I feel like I have accumulated this to-do list where everything is just kind of stacked vertically on my head and the weight of the world is on my shoulders. And then after that 70 or 80-minute contrast therapy session, I feel like that massive to-do list all of a sudden is just sprinkled out in front of me and I can tiptoe over it. So from a mental and emotional well-being standpoint, I just feel so clear afterwards. I feel energized and I feel calm. I feel this stress resilience from doing it. And what it looks like is we run our sauna around 200 degrees. I'll be in the sauna for about 20 minutes. And generally I'm doing this with other people. It's typically where I take in-person meetings, typically when we have friends over. So I also consider it human connection time. And it's 3 rounds, 20 minutes in the sauna at 200, and then about 3 to 5 minutes in an ice barrel, anywhere between 40 and 50 degrees, depending on the season. In the wintertime in Denver, it's going to be really cold. It might be in the lower to mid 30s. And then in the summertime, depending on how much ice I get, it could get up into the 50s. And a lot also depends on how many people are going in and out of the ice barrel. But that's what it looks like, 3 rounds of that. And afterwards, man, I just feel so good, just energized and clear. And, I have no anxiety. I have no stress. I just feel like the world is my oyster. And that's why I do it every day. And that's why I do it at 5 p.m. I like doing it in the evenings where it's just this reboot from the day. And I have other things throughout the day that are built in where, I hit my morning workout from 8:30 until 10:30 each day. I generally reserve my CrossFit session, which is the hardest training I'll do that day, for the morning. And then afterwards, I know my mind is going to be on fire. I'm going to be sharp. I'm going to be energized. So I have about a 3 to 3.5 hour window where I schedule calls with brands. I schedule calls with new brands that are interested in working together. I schedule podcasts. I create hooks for content. And then after 3.5 hours, I know that my cognition will probably start fading a bit. So then in Colorado, I'll go off into the mountains and I'll mountain bike for 60 to 90 minutes. And then that's my reboot to then have another 3-ish hour work sprint and then the sauna session, which is the real reboot. So, my days have these ebbs and flows of executing and then doing something that will help me with the next execution.
So you grew up in Syracuse, New York, I think. Is that what you said? Outside?
Yep.
Okay. So cold, a different dynamic to Denver, Austin, Florida, obviously. Do I have it right as well that your father started a business in insurance and then you started in that business out of college and kind of was really developing? That was your day job and that was the transformation that you made. Can you just walk the listeners briefly through that transformation? Because I think there's 2 parts that I'm super interested in, and that is playing the part of what you think everybody wants you to be when you're young, your 20s and 30s, you're trying to figure it out. And then I've heard you mention that it felt like you were playing all the time. And so like you were caught in these 2 worlds, but then the playing kind of developed into something that's business. And I think that dynamic for the listener is really interesting for everyone to hear.
For sure. So my father managed a small mutual insurance company in upstate New York. And the day I graduated from college at 21 years old, I took my property and casualty insurance examination. So 3 weeks of courses and then take the test. And then I had my license. And for 7 years, I drove 50,000 plus miles a year going door to door, selling insurance, property and casualty insurance to campgrounds and marinas. And, I thank my father for that opportunity because that gave me the financial foundation that enabled me to start then taking risks. Residual income where you sell the policy, you get paid commission. As long as you keep that policy, you keep getting paid the same commission. So each year I would sell more policies and I would continue increasing my financial foundation. So super grateful that I started with an opportunity like that instead of just trading time for money and not having any kind of asset or foundation to then find things I was passionate about. My second business was in software. I partnered with some college students at Syracuse University and one very good friend in Syracuse, and we created this software company called Rounded, which built mobile applications for businesses and also somewhere on the App Store, so for consumers. I did that for 4 years, and again, that was an asset that I was able to build and then sell and make some money from it that paved the way for more risks. So the lesson I learned there was when you're young and if you're going to trade time for money, try and find something where there's residual income or you're building this financial foundation or you're building some kind of asset with it. But during those years from 21 to 27, sitting all the time, not having real education around, healthy eating. I thought Subway was my healthiest option when I was on the road because of marketing. And, I was maybe working out 2 or 3 times a week, but very vanity-based, bench press, bicep curls. I was doing very little cardio. So at 27, 28 years old, I found myself with a gut and, I didn't look like I looked like in high school and college. I didn't look like an athlete anymore. So I hired a personal trainer when I was 27 or 28, and the personal trainer got me into aesthetically good-looking shape. And through that, I started running again. I had a running background. I ran in cross country and track in high school. And then, met some friends who had these really fancy triathlon bikes with 4 handlebars, and I was more intrigued by the bikes than anything. So signed up for my first triathlon, and it was ultimately triathlon that led to a half Ironman, a full Ironman. And during that time period, I had a lot of time alone, running, biking, with my endorphins racing. And again, I hit the brakes and I had time to think and reflect. And I realized that I was living my life for others during that time period, just being materialistic and just trying to make more money. And, there was no real sense of fulfillment from it, where there was tremendous sense of fulfillment from the running, the biking, going further than I ever thought I'd be able to go and faster than I'd ever thought I'd be able to go. And, I wasn't abusing alcohol anymore. I really felt like I was becoming the best version of myself, and I was being just really authentic. I was so passionate about triathlon and exercise that people were becoming attracted to me. People were messaging me on, that was the start of social media during that time period from 2010 to 2015. So, people were reaching out, saying I was inspiring them. So all of a sudden I went from chasing to attracting, and it clicked for me that, damn, my cup is so full that I am now attracting opportunities into my life. I'm attracting people into my life. I really want to continue doing this. And I didn't realize it was going to lead to this chapter of my life. At the time, it was very much based around just exercise. I wanted to see how far I could take triathlon. But, through triathlon and through social media, all of a sudden, I attracted this audience from sharing content online and inspiring people and trying to add value along the way of things I implemented that benefited me so much. Ultimately, movement is medicine, kind of the moniker I live by. And by adding value for audiences, I attracted a following. And when you have a following, then all of a sudden you have value for brands. And now I've figured out this whole ecosystem where I'm able to add massive value for early stage wellness companies. I'm able to still add value for my audience, and I've been able to build an incredible business by doing things that I truly love, where I get to interact with the people I want to be around every day in environments where I want to be. I make sure that founders of these companies are friends. I would fly to Tokyo with them and sit next to them and just have a flow state conversation with them. And, creating content around my lifestyle, which I would be doing the exact same things every day, regardless of whether or not I'm being compensated. I truly love what I'm doing, who I'm interacting with, all of the workouts, even though some of them in the moment, they're pretty brutal. And so, I call this kind of my perfect day chapter of my life, where I figured out my perfect day about 6 or 7 years ago. And, now these last 4 or 5 years, I've figured out how to monetize it.
It's really crazy how when you're chasing money, you'll never catch it. And it's always empty. But when you start actually doing what you love, doing it for a bigger purpose and building off of that, you would start to attract. And that's exactly what you're talking about, which I think is really, really valuable. An interesting conversation I had yesterday, I've been in the financial services industry for 21 plus years, much like you at 23 years old after having a suit and tie job at the Attorney General's office for a couple years. That was even more of like having to be on and older right out of the gate. I went to knocking on doors and cold calling and building a business from scratch. And I completely understand what that dynamic was like. And you fall into what you think you need to be versus what you want to be when you grow up. And as you define what you want to be when you grow up, it's so much more liberating to be able to do those things. People often will say, how did you just figure out that you love doing podcasts? Or who do you know that was doing a podcast? And I was like, well, honestly, I know lots of people that are doing podcasts, but I just knew that I wanted to have those kinds of conversations so I could continue to learn and get good energy and meet cool people that we could potentially do cool stuff in the future and get on a Tokyo flight and be in flow state for 20 hours. Like, that's exactly the point. But one of the points I wanted to get at is the conversation that you just brought up is something that I had yesterday where one of the younger advisors I was talking to, he said, the number one job, Scott, the people want to be today is an influencer. So young kids want to be an influencer. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to challenge you because I think you're coming at it from the average 40 to 65-year-old that immediately hears that and says, it's horrible. That's disgusting. Like, they need to be thinking about doing. And I said, what should they be doing? And he was like, well, I mean, just anything. And I said, what, like be a doctor? So maybe they can go work 85 hours a week and work nights and struggle to maintain a healthy body, healthy relationships. Like, there's so many other great jobs out there, right? But they're saving lives, but they're imbalanced in other ways, right? It's finding that balance. But you've done so in a way where you would be considered influential in the spaces, especially in the health and wellness area. Talk to me about like just some thoughts on that conversation, because I don't see it being all that bad, but it helps our listeners really think about their kids, their grandkids, their friends that are thinking about these things and maybe wanting to do a little bit more. And you did it from scratch. Like, you built this from the bottom up the right way. Walk people through some thoughts you have on that topic.
Yeah, so, I think influencer gets a bad rap, but ultimately it is having a personal brand, and having a personal brand is going to be advantageous regardless of whether you're an influencer, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you want to build a company. It's going to teach you so many skills about how to build relationships with people, how to create marketing campaigns, how to get your message across, how to storytell. So I think there's so many things you can learn by having a personal brand that you can apply to other things. So I think for someone young that is interested in that, it's going to benefit them regardless of where they go, because the doctor ultimately is selling themselves to get their job at a hospital, and the attorney is ultimately selling themselves to get a job at the law practice. We're always selling ourselves. We're always going to benefit if we can build relationships with people. We're always going to benefit if we have social capital. We're always going to benefit if there's awareness around us. And we're always going to benefit if we have a full cup, because that means you're going to start attracting people into your life and you're going to start attracting opportunities into your life. So that's really how I look at it. So I think it's cool that so many people are turned on to this now. I just caution them to, it's not as easy as just having this number next to your name and think that you're going to get paid. Like, you still have to come into every relationship with, how can I add value for you? How can I provide a return on your investment, regardless of whether you're the doctor, the attorney, working for someone, you have your own business, you're selling products. Like, that is the foot I always put forward. And that's why I have worked with the companies I work with. I know I can add massive value for early stage wellness companies. I probably can't add that much value for a late stage business in a category where I have zero knowledge. So I stay in my lane, and I've built a personal brand and influence within that lane.
Yeah, it's like being 6'4", 21 years old, and running a 4.140 and going to the NFL. If you don't continue to work, you're not gonna have a career. You're not gonna have a job. It's work ethic coupled with the passion and the intensity and the goals that you've laid out for yourself. And all you're explaining is the people that just think it's going to be there when they wake up is not really the result. So a lot of kids are thinking like I did, like you might have when we were younger, where, I mean, if you ask any 12 to 13-year-old boy and below what they want to be when they grow up, they're going to say some level of a professional athlete most of the time. So, and they could be playing the lowest level of the sport they're in, have no concept. And then all of a sudden they get to high school and they're like, oh man, I don't know if I'll be able to actually do that. I might start thinking of something different. And I think that the work ethic, the commonality in loving what you do, but with work, is such a great point. And I like the personal brand thing because I've had lots of conversations with people's teenagers who are approaching college, and they're like, hey, Scott, will you talk to my son or my daughter? They don't know what they want to be, and I want them to define what they want to be. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to be. How can they define what they want to be right now? Can we? And so they're like, well, at least guide them on what they can major in. And I say, look, if you don't know what to major in, I always say go to marketing. At the end of the day, you're going to have to sell yourself. You're going to have to sell a product. You're going to have to sell something. And I don't just mean sell. I mean, understand the brand, understand the human behind the brand, understand the company that you're representing. Like, all those things are going to work at any engineering, being a doctor, a lawyer, everything you mentioned. So I think we're very aligned in that concept, but I love the mentality of it's a personal brand. That's really what you're developing, and that's beneficial at any stage of the game in any capacity.
100%. I mean, the beautiful thing about the internet is it allows for compound interest much easier than, a brick and mortar store in a town. It's going to be difficult to get the kind of compounding effect that you can get from all of the people that you can reach on the internet. And, I really look back at my insurance career, and I applied a lot of the same skills from my insurance career to what I'm doing now online, meaning that early on, I was knocking on lots of doors and, nothing was really happening, but I was creating this skill set where I was getting into the habit of consistently posting content, creating content, and that allowed me to hone my craft. And I stayed in my lane long enough that I became a thought leader within the space, just like with the insurance, where I stayed in my lane for 7 years of specializing in campgrounds and marinas. So I applied those same skill sets to social media. It just so happens that social media, it really compounds with the amount of people that you can reach over time. Now when I say something, I can reach hundreds of thousands of people, where you can't really do that same thing when you're driving, going door to door, selling insurance. And so, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about the web. And the beautiful thing about having that personal brand is all of a sudden, when that compounds over time, you have a massive audience that you can reach by doing one post now today.
Yeah, I think, if you're listening out here and you're saying, hey, I don't want to build a personal brand, it's not something that I'm interested in, it's not who I am. One thing I would say is that a lot of people are building a personal brand, whether they know it or not. And the more true you are to that personal brand, the better it is. So what I mean by that is if you're a show and tell fake book or Instagram person and you're just throwing out all the best moments of your life and only the things that you want people to see, but never the things that actually show who you are, it can also make us feel a little worse. So anybody that's posting anything, anyone that's sharing their life, the more you share as long as you're comfortable with it and it's who you are, the more you're going to find people interested in your life. And do you see Instagram as powerful as it was? And do you see it continuing to build, or do you see other platforms starting to become more important at this point in time?
So I think Instagram and YouTube are still the main platforms where you can capitalize on an audience. TikTok is certainly growing fast, and there's certain creators on TikTok that have been able to really capitalize on it. Newsletters are another great way to capitalize. So written thought and building a big list. And then websites still are massive assets, review type websites where you're a thought leader in a certain space and you're reviewing certain products. So I would say website, newsletter, Instagram, YouTube are the places that I'm most interested in. I'm focusing the majority of my time. TikTok is definitely in that mix of I'm thinking about it. But ultimately, I think it's best to do what weaves in best with your lifestyle, and something where you can dedicate a lot of time and effort to becoming a master at that platform. I think it's best to master one platform and then, move on to other platforms once you've mastered one, instead of trying to master all of them at the same time, because they're all a bit different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. And it's interesting. So many people will watch a reel, or there's an age demographic for almost every platform as well. And it's funny where someone will watch a reel and they'll be like, hey, I want to watch the rest of this, but I don't actually know how to go on YouTube and do it. I've been at events where someone hands me their phone and they're like, I don't know my YouTube login. How do I get into YouTube? Is this a Gmail? And you start walking people through, but if it's on the right platform and it's your audience, it can really be valuable to deliver it in the right way to the right people. Shifting gears, what are the products? You're a brand ambassador for so many cool things. What are some of the things that are just absolutely cool and people should know about, and things that are coming or that you love using every day? What's on the horizon? Just health and wellness stuff that's really interesting, because I know I love you. You use the ice barrel. I haven't bought an ice barrel yet. I have the plunge. And so I have it at 38 to 41 degrees every day, and I hop in. My best friend has the two of them have the ice barrel. So I've done all of them. But what are the cool things that are out there right now, Eric, that you think are worth talking about?
Yeah, so I mean, the theme I'm really running with right now is doing things, using things where there is benefit with no consequences. So, for example, drugs and alcohol, you abuse them, there's going to be a feeling, but there's going to be consequences that come along with it. But if you do contrast therapy, if you jump in cold water for 3 minutes, there's going to be a feeling from that, but there's no consequences. And I would argue that there are compound snowball effects of doing practices like that, because you're probably going to then sleep better, which is going to give you more energy. You're going to be more productive. Where on the other hand, indulging in alcohol or drugs, you're probably going to get shitty sleep. You're going to make poor eating decisions. You're not going to have as much energy or productivity the next day. So if you compound those over a 5-year period, all of a sudden you're in two very different places in life. So some of those products, sauna, SISU sauna, we use it every single night. We use our ice barrel every single night. I really like products like HVMN ketones, where it really drops me into the moment, and it's good, clean energy that I can use to feel a certain way. I like product electrolytes. I have definitely been a big fan of, especially with the extreme sauna sessions that I do and all of the workouts, having enough electrolytes in your system so that you're not cramping and you feel good. Various nootropics I like. I work with a company called Caffeine Army that has some caffeine and various nootropics in it. So again, it drops you into the moment. You have these benefits, but no consequences from it. Man, I work with a lot of amazing companies.
Yeah, you don't have to name. You don't have to. I know because I asked you about it. Now you probably feel the need to name them all, but we can always have a link at the back of all the cool stuff that you want us listed in the YouTube video of this, or the podcast notes. But I look back at some of the wearable technology like the Whoop. I started wearing the Whoop in 2019, and I haven't taken it off my wrist since. And it's been a game changer for me. I mean, you talk about alcohol. A perfect example is I still drink, not anywhere near what I would have in the past. I am not one of those people that just given it up. But at the end of the day, I know that wine impacts my sleep on a significant basis versus bourbon. And I know when you have to stop drinking to be able to sleep better. And I know how the older we get, the worse we feel when we drink alcohol in general. But the Whoop has actually shown me the accountability to every decision I'm making about my health and my wellness. And that's been what type of workouts, what type of recovery, how the electrolytes matter. Like, it's allowed me to start paying attention to things. And I'm excited about that revolution, because I think this is only the beginning of where we're heading. And I think that's part of what you're doing with your health and wellness houses, right? I mean, it's something where you're kind of drawing attention to the very things that are accountable to people so they can build these practices in their lives.
Agree. Yeah. I mean, I think the next evolution of wellness and the trackable space is going to be, things like continuous glucose monitors, but they're measuring your testosterone in real time. They're measuring your cortisol in real time. They're showing how various foods and activities are affecting those levels. So, we need to go deeper with a lot of these trackable things. So I think over the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to really come into play, where we just have this continuous blood monitoring source and it's telling us in real time, hey, this is how this drink is affecting you. This is how your, poor sleep affected you. This is how this workout benefited you. This is how that high protein meal benefited you. So I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah, and the mind is a powerful thing. So folks, don't worry, you're still going to make bad decisions. And we're still going to do stuff to our bodies that we don't want to, that we know is bad, because you do lots of things every day that we know is bad, and we still keep doing it. I had an interesting, I went to the dentist this morning, and I'm getting my teeth cleaned, and I'm having this conversation with the dental hygienist, and we started talking. They talk to you while it's in your mouth and you can't like really respond, but then they run the conversation. But one of the interesting thoughts that came out of it was, we were talking about our parents' generation and their lack of sharing their health history and the past history, and how like there's a different dynamic, and our generation is one where we're very health centric. We don't want to go to the doctor to just cover up the problem. We want to solve the problem. We don't mind talking about it in the open, so that if I share something that might affect you or help you, you can use it to help yourself or to share it with your family. I would tell my children if something's wrong. And then the same thing about money. It's interesting because I think the same way about money. If you want to have a mindset or build a mindset of abundance with your next generation, you got to openly talk about it. And the generations before were very closed, very scarcity mindset, like no weakness, no mentality that would let you in. And what do you feel the same way? Do you feel like that's a nice change that you see happening? And maybe how are your parents with it? Do they share everything, or are they kind of shut down?
No, I mean, I remember when I started posting a lot on social media, my parents cautioned me to share my life on social media. And, now they know the type of business I have around it. So now they're okay with it because they know I've built a business around it, but they weren't okay with me sharing it. I mean, I think we've grown up in this generation where we have these massive online communities, and our parents' generation, they had their small town, they had their city, they weren't able to broadcast messages. They didn't have access to someone in California via a phone and a screen. So we have very different technology now that has made our generation very comfortable being in front of and talking to many people. And reality TV kind of started the trend of like sharing our lives. And now, hundreds of millions of people, if not billions of people, share their lives online every single day. So it's just become more normalized. But yeah, I mean, my dad is not on social media. My mom doesn't really share anything, but she consumes social media. I mean, she stays up to date on my life through social media. So it's benefited her in that she knows I'm in Florida right now and she knows what's going on in my life.
They love that. They do love that.
They do. Yeah. They like being able to stay closely tied to what their loved ones are doing. But I still think my parents are in their 70s. Yeah, they're very guarded. They're certainly not as open about their life and finances and health as I may be.
Yeah. It's interesting. My mom listens to the podcast, so she might be listening to this. And we, over the Christmas break, we had some, I went over to the house and we were talking, and she was bringing up certain guests and asking me really insightful, awesome questions. And we were having a great conversation. And it's nice to share that aspect, something that, they get a peek into what you do every day. And I think that's something that hasn't really existed. You were only telling them your version of it. But when you do a podcast or you're putting something out in social media, people can actually respond in how it impacted or affected them. And that's really what you want, right? I mean, and when it's your parents, that's even more valuable. So, and from a health perspective, I still have to pull things out of them. My mom lost all this weight and was amazing, looked great. And I'm asked, she would not tell us anything. So I finally took her to lunch. I was like, Mom, are you sick? Is something wrong? Like, what's going on? Because I'm nervous. And she's like, no, I just changed all my eating habits. I made lifestyle changes. I'm doing this. I'm walking every day. I mean, amazing. And you're so proud. You're like, why are you keeping this to yourself? Like, tell us all. We're so proud of you. So it's a different mentality, but maybe part of what you're doing, part of what you're sharing, part of the way that people are sharing more, that's the movement that we need to get people more comfortable so that they feel more a part of that community.
Agree. And I mean, it's so cool that all of us now have a microphone, because for years we were marketed to by the big companies, the companies that could afford the billboards, the Wheaties that sponsored Michael Jordan and said, this is what you need before every game and workout. And now all of us have a microphone to share what's working for us. And oftentimes that's a radically different message than some of the big companies out there that, can put their ads on billboards and market to us.
Yeah, it's painful to watch so many people go through the health struggle where they're trying to eat healthy and they swear they made major changes and they think they're eating healthy and nothing they're putting in their body is healthy. And, now we all have to start somewhere and we all have to learn. But the beauty of the internet, the beauty of following certain people, watching the ins and outs of the health and wellness industry can really provide us with things that, I'm a human testing zone. Like I test everything. If I started doing cryotherapy in 2016 and I saw the impact it made on the inflammation in my body. I had some back issues. A doctor told me that a surgeon said I had to have surgery and I'd never play soccer again. And I'm like, no way. So you start doing cryo and everything changes. I'm back on a field. I'm running. I'm feeling healthier than ever. And you watch that amplify over time, and I'm just testing it on myself. And I think that's really what I'm excited about, is watching people test, following the biohackers, the people that are just trying everything. What is it, Ben Greenfield, who's constantly like putting something in his body, and it's fun to watch. Like, that's good stuff for me.
Agree.
So I'm glad you're doing these things. I'm glad you're out there like sharing this message with the world. Tell our listeners where they can get more of you and how they can find you if they want to see the next chapter.
Sure. Instagram is the best place. Just my name, Eric Hinman, erichinman.com. I have some more content there, but Instagram is the best place to see anything and also to reach out to me. I love talking about this stuff. So anyone that messages me, I enjoy these conversations and happy to help.
So over the next month, as we wrap up here, what's priority number one for Eric? What are you focused on as you're going through the reboot, the rejuvenation, the drive to Florida? What's priority number one in the next quarter for you?
Yeah, I mean, that delegation, automation, elimination, just to get some more time back. And, being down here in Florida, we're going to spend some time with my girlfriend's family. So looking forward to that for sure. And then really thinking through like the next 3 to 5 years, what are some things I can do this year that really set the stage for years to come? And some of that is building some brands around all of the people I've met through the years. So doing these founders only events, I really enjoy in-person events. Would love to get to a place where I'm hosting larger and larger events, wellness-based experiences. So that's a lot of what I'm thinking about. Sarah and I are exploring building a home in Austin, so that will be really fun over this next year, just designing it to be something we really enjoy, but also to be an oasis for entertaining and from the various wellness ways that we enjoy entertaining.
That's awesome. Well, I love following your story. I really love learning about you. It's been a great visit with you as you are on the drive, literally on the drive. For the listeners, he's actually in his Tesla driving to Florida. Dog Blaze is sitting in the background the whole time, just chilling, and they're recharging now. So Eric, thanks for joining me today, and thanks for being a guest on the High Performance Life.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.